Hello guys, this is video about pagination and pagination design strategy for the application that would use Memcache, Redis, server-side client-server communication, the pagination request. We'll be talking about whether we need or not to use Nginx CDN, and we'll be talking about HTTP conditional requests. This is the second video in this series. If you haven't watched first one, where we were drawing all these diagrams, go ahead and watch it. If not, I'll try to keep this video as independent as possible anyway. Right now, what you see on the screen is kind of a refined version of what we already had in previous video and first video. I will go and explain what's going on here. I can tell you right away that I had discussions with ChatGPT. In this video, I will try to use ChatGPT and answer the question whether I can or cannot use it efficiently to get what I want from it and see if my work benefits from it. Okay. And I can tell you right away that I did try to communicate to it while drawing these diagrams, and I had a couple of problems. I'll try to reproduce what that conversation was about, and you will see. Okay, let's go with the question. We want to build client-server web application that supports pagination, and we want to cache the result. How we can do it? Assuming that we use HTTP to communicate with the server and the client is the browser. This is the question. So the idea here is just to make it clear that we go on step by step and see how far we can go from the very beginning. So we just want to build application and we will go with the questions, proper questions, and sometimes we already kind of know the answer, so we're already kind of expecting what to expect, right? But this is actually good because we can actually test ChatGPT whether it provides with right answers or not. So let's see right away what we got really fast. Browser caching. You can use browser cache to store the result. Okay, cool. This will reduce the number of network requests. That's exactly what we want. The browser cache can be controlled using HTTP headers, such as cache control, expires, and etag. Okay. So right away we might have questions about that, like what should we use, cache control, expires, or etag, Server-side caching. And this is browser caching, right? So that's what we need. I think we need browser caching for sure. So we have to cache on the browser side and on the server side as well. So server-side caching. Well, it's saying that it's another option. Let's see. Another option is to cache the result of the API request on the server side. You can use cache stores such as Redis or Memcached to store the API responses. I think right now, it's trying to please me with this Redis and Memcache thing because I already had communication with it and it probably remembers what I asked before. Right. Redis or Memcache to store the API responses. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to store it in the Memcache and Redis because we want our server side to be fast. As well, we will be caching it on the browser side. So we will avoid browser-server communication. The server will even not need to send us anything. Right, so it's going to be two type of caches. So this another option is not necessarily another option, but I guess it could just avoid this because there could be two options at the same time. But let's say we'll not apply too much of critical thinking about these responses for now. If not, you can fetch the result from the database. Okay, cool. Client-side caching, client-side. So what the difference between browser caching and client-side caching? You can also cache the result of the API request on the client side using JavaScript. You can also store result in memory. Basically, what it's saying, we can do it manually on the client side in the browser using JavaScript, which is cool. It's an option, like if we want to. It is important to choose a caching strategy that balances the trade-off between freshness of the data and performance, right? For example, if the data caching frequently, you may want to use short cache time. So far so good. So I'm pleased with this response. That's okay. So it's given us the direction, right? It's talking about the strategy. We'll certainly use this in our application. Like I said, we have questions about that, like should we use all of that or not? And Also, there will be a second question about this trade-off between freshness, data, and performance. Two questions right now that I will ask it. Okay, there are two questions. Let me ask this. Should I use all the headers, all the following headers to make my cache work? Or I can use, let's say, just e tag without cache control and expires. Like that. I guess it's a fair enough question, right? Let's go. There is no typos. Usually it works okay with typos. Yeah, right now, not much of help actually, right? Because combination is something that it already told me before. So just explaining everything bit by bit, but I'm just looking for specific answer about a tag because I asked, can I use just a tag? Yeah, depends on requirements of your application. That is not very useful. Let's just read about this. A tag header is used to provide unique identifier for a response, which can be used to validate cached response. Okay, let's expand. Another question, because this is not useful so far. Will browser cache the data from that it receives from the server if I use only e tag value and not using cache control at all? Yes, the browser will cache the data that it receives from the server if you use a tag. A tag headers provide unique identifier. Okay, same thing again and again, but the answer is yes. And then why? Why is yes? So this is like, however, it is important to know that while a tag header can be used to validate cached responses, it alone cannot control caching behavior for the responses. If you want to control the maximum age of the cache responses, you will need to use cache control header to expire header. In the absence of these headers, the browser may use its default caching policy, which cannot be suitable for your application. So that's kind of makes sense. Okay, so this is convincible. I bought it. So I'm gonna use cache control. One more question. If I use cache control headers, what and when these headers should be in use? Which to be sent by client and which by the server? Does it make sense? Let's see. Both. It's supposed specifically cache control header to specify where the responses is cacheable. So we most likely will use this, right? So server can use cache control max age header. So that's it. So server will respond back to the client with cache control max, let's say 1 hour in this case. And it means that server will know that the default whatever policy for cache update will be not used, but it will use this one. So in 1 hour, it will ask again properly server to get the new information. But at the same time, like we discovered before, we will use it tag also to make it clear for the server what we're asking for, because that will identify the resource. And it also provides like additional layer of caching, so like a primary and secondary, something like that, my understanding. There's some, okay, and this is how we can use this cache control. So most likely we'll use this and this. It's always wrapping up with this. It depends on your requirements. Really kind of catchy words here. So good enough, good enough. Let's go to the next question. So the next question is this about, it mentioned before, there is a trade-off between freshness of the data and something, right? And it triggers some memories, let's say, because on the server side, we can use Redis or database to keep data and sending it back to the client, right? And this data that we send to the client is supposed to be fresh, right? So that's why we keep it in memcache for some time. Then the cache is always refresh itself, eviction happens. This way we make sure that data is fresh, whatever we send to the client. Also, when we send it to the client, we're going to use this cache control and e tag. so that everything will be aligned in terms of like how often client is supposed to ask for the data, which is fine. But do I need to use Redis? Why I cannot use, let's say, CDN? Because it's all about freshness of the data, right? And we know that CDN stands for Content Delivery Network, meaning that whatever our content is, in our case it's JSON, could be cached on CDN side and it could be sent to the client as well. Then we don't need to use any Redis at all. And CDN is a solution that doesn't require any deployment and works out of the box, then why don't we use CDN for caching? So that's basically what I thought about when it mentioned about this freshness of data, right? So that triggers my interest, and that's the next question will be for it. So let's go with the question. Both solutions, Redis and Memcache on server side, and second solution, CDN, both of them seems provide caching for the client. When should we use first or second solution? What to consider? That's kind of interesting question, I think, because it needs to compare two solutions and it needs to confirm that this is a correct question, first of all, right? We'll see. Both Redis and Memcached and CDN content delivery network, so this way we understand that it understood us, are caching solutions. So it confirmed that it can be used to improve the performance on web application. The choice between these solutions depends on the requirements of your application. Okay, again, catchy words, but that's okay. Redis and Memcache and CDN. So about Redis, we kind of no. Let's just read for CDN. A CDN is network blah blah. It can cache static resources such as images, videos, and CSS and JavaScript files. Can reduce the latency. That's correct. Typically more expensive than using a memory cache like Redis. Okay, good to know. Well, but expensive in terms of what? Like if you pay for DevOps to support your solution with that it's not scalable enough, then it's going to be expensive too. And to build a solution is expensive too, right? From scratch and all this coding. So expensive is a relative thing. When choosing between these solutions, you should consider the following factors: cache size and memory usage, cache consistency, performance and latency, cost, okay, well, limited server memory, okay. CDN can be more expensive, that's okay. In general, you use combination of these solutions to achieve the best results. Okay, one more question related to this. If my data has to be updated every 5 minutes, let's say, in the cache, what is the best solution? CDN or Redis and Memcache? What is the best solution to choose? And let's say JSON data. Okay, so let's go with this question. You see, I made a typo, but it understood. If your JSON data needs to be updated every 5 minutes, you should consider using an in-memory cache like Redis or Memcache instead of CDN. CDN are designed to cache static content and are not allowed to suit it for frequently updated dynamic. So good enough, actually, good enough. So I got what I wanted. So since we got our answers from ChatGPT, we'll be going with client-server solution that using Memcache and Redis, because our data is sensitive to updates. Like we need to update it frequently, okay, every 5 minutes. So that's why CDN is out of equation. Otherwise, if we go with CDN, then most likely we would use Nginx, which will be doing the same kind of stuff that we would do on the server side, but manually, meaning that generating attack values and handling it. For that we would need to put this flag on off. By the way, so I researched this as well with ChatGPT, by the way, and it actually gave me all that information, but I had to ask that many times until I get this. So I would be better off if I just go and read documentation specifically for this piece of information than just asking it, so many times. So, and since we're going with this solution, I put several cases here. This is a sequence diagram which involves all these participants like client, server, Memcache, and DB. In this case, DB is Redis itself. And we will be going through these, okay? In next video, we'll be doing some coding but right now I'm just showing you what it looks like. There will be something like initial request, subsequent request, and next subsequent request, depending on what responses we get from the server. So when we get 3 or 4, it means not modified, right? And it means that it's cached on the server side. But if cache is outdated, the server will not send back again e tag, and we will get again 200 response back, and we will ask it again. The server will ask this again, and will do its work, getting information from database and memcache. What is missing here is the cache control headers that GPT mentioned. We will use it as well. So there we will put here a cache control headers like max expiration dates or something like that. So the server, like let's say for 1 hour or 5 minutes, when to ask for the fresh data again from the server. Otherwise, it might, like GPT said, it might use its default policy, which may be not aligned with our requirements. So that's it for this video. This video was designed to this conversation with GPT and aligning what we're going to do on the next video, which will be coding. So the next video will be coding, and also will be asking for suggestion from GPT. So so far it's not that bad, actually, right? You can agree. Okay, see you for now. Thank you for watching.